Testing.
Everything works for HPC.
Good evening. Design Review Board public meeting of January 8th, 2015 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting. Please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door, submitted to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff for receipt notice for subsequent meetings. Current agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. Agendas. Let's see. This will be roll call. Mr. Lincoln?
Here.
Mr. Churchin?
Here.
Ms. Palmer? Here. Mr. Simonian?
Present.
Mr. Martin? All at or before 5 p.m. on December 30th, 2014. Not aware of any oral communications that we have other than a new chairman for nominate and then second we'll go through.
Mr. Mardian?
I'll second that.
Happy New Year, huh?
Yeah.
This will be roll call, Mr.
That's cool.
That's
Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
Mr. Church?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Simonian?
yes.
Mr. Mardian, yes. We need to also vote for a vice chair, just in case.
Do you do that?
We've never done
done
that
that.
before.
Different boards and commissions do it differently, and I can't remember the bylaws. You've never done it? Okay. Then DRB selects, if the chair's absent, then so you elect amongst yourselves. Okay. Yeah. HPC, we have a vice chair.
That'll become effective tonight.
Okay.
And
At least I'm still in the middle of you guys.
Yeah, I know.
is there anyone in the audience here for 2920 Greenwich Road? If so, that is being continued to the Design Review Board meeting 12th. That will not be heard tonight. It will be continued to February 12th. Mr. Chairman, would you take it from
Thank you. First case is, I don't see anything for oral communication. We'll move to the first case. 532, 536 Elk Avenue. I'll go with staff.
Thank you, Chairman Mardian, and good evening, board members. The first item before you is case number 1408491, located 532, 536 West Elk. This project was presented before the board on September 11, 2014, and at that time the board voted to have the project returned for redesign with condition and comments. So this is a second attempt for a final review. The site planning, mass and scale essentially remain the same as previously. Overall, actually, it remains the same as previously reviewed by the board. However, because of the conditions that were imposed on this project, some changes were made, and staff believed that it refined the project further based on the board's guidance. And there were 20 conditions that were provided to the applicants, and staff believe that each of the conditions have been satisfied. Each one helped improve the project further. If I can just point out some of the major changes, one of the change is the location of the driveway to the western side of the property now, instead of one that bisects the property, and also the arrangement of the parking spaces underground. Previously, it was proposed in private garages that had direct access into the units. Now, the parking spaces are arranged in a common method, and also the design of the front yard in terms of the handicap ramp. So as you can see, there's the proposed design will not require handrails along or within the front landscape area. And other than that, the project overall is designed in the same style, and the applicant has successfully addressed the concerns expressed by the board. If you would like, I can go over the conditions and how it was addressed.
Does anyone want to go over the conditions?
It'd be helpful to quickly go over them.
Okay. So, condition or comments number 1, provide construction details showing key details of how various materials transition, such as stucco to metal siding, window surrounds to metal siding, and colors and materials seems appropriate but require refinement in their detailing. So that is on sheet 19, where you can see the interface between the different materials. In terms of colors, that actually remain the same as previously seen by the board. Number 2, specify the deck finish. The deck is called out to be colored concrete. 3, specify the perimeter block wall finish, height and details. So the perimeter wall will be a combination of stucco base and wrought iron on top. Number 4, consider berming the front yard and adjoining common area, and berming was incorporated into along the walkway that connects to the podium level. 5, clarify the handicap ramp railing requirements and location. This was researched by the applicant after the initial meeting, and the new design reflects compliance with building code. 6, minimize long expanses of straight walls, introduce more undulation, particularly at side walls and interior court. So that the improvements per this comment is seen on sheet 2. And 7, provide interior court elevation. That was provided and in your packet. 8, reconsider the interior court. It appears to have narrow tunnel-like proportions and dead-end circulation. So the courtyard has been enlarged from 14 feet wide to 20 feet, and the dead-end circulation has been eliminated and replaced with a gate that opens to the front setback street. 9, consider cantilevering Unit 1 into the center courtyard at the second floor level. The second floor of Units 1A and 1B are cantilevered 1 foot 6 inches beyond the ground floor unit, and that is reflected on sheet 10. Increase the size of the balconies. The depth of the balconies has been increased to 4 feet at the narrowest portion. And 11, increase the size of planters where bamboo is specified. So the planters has been increased to 2 feet wide. Tulip trees do not perform well in this area and should be replaced, and the applicant has done that. 13, provide a landscape irrigation plan. That was provided. And 14, explore an alternative and more appropriate location for the AC unit at Unit 3. The condensing units have been relocated to where the bridges used to be that connects the rear wing to the wings facing the street. And 5, provide an accurate floor roof plan. 6, provide drawing with consistency of plans, elevation, and details. And 7, address how the access lift functions, landing locations, and the effect on the surrounding areas. The lift has been eliminated from the project, and in its place, an elevator will be provided at the rear of the courtyard and will be accessible from the podium level and the parking garage. Reconsider the appropriateness of the shed roof design. The shed roof is still part of the new revised project, but however, staff believe that the cladding recommending a different cladding material may help better integrate the area to the overall design, and that is a condition also of approval. A private balcony, bridges.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit and explain which one you're talking about?
The sloping roof area
Okay.
on the 2 wings facing the street.
Right.
Yes.
What do you mean by the cladding and?
Well, we believe it simply can't just be color. It must be a different material, such as standing seam metal.
Well, the way I see it is that the roof material is wrapping over to the face of the building, so the material is coming down and it's carrying it
Right.
over onto the facade. So
We felt it
what
should
is
wrap down the sides as
Is this the
well.
one you're
on
talking
the
about?
side.
Create a volumetric.
This is it?
Yes, that's
I see.
that's the area we're referring
Just
to.
let the metal define that sloping volume rather than just be a superficial cladding. I don't know how visible that, it will be somewhat visible. It's
From the street, on the
Yeah.
other side of the street.
Yeah.
It's a fairly subtle change, but I think it'll help.
All right.
And then the board recommended that the applicant meet with various division and departments within the city to clarify some of the concerns expressed by the board. And the applicant has done that, such as dedication, ingress, egress, accessibility. And there were no issues in those areas. And the applicant is here to answer any questions you may have, but that concludes my presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Any questions?
It looks like paper.
Any questions?
I have a
to-
question regarding on the material board where it calls out the sheet metal wall panels. Is this a sample of the sheet metal? It's paper. I'm just trying to find out if it's the actual.
Yes, no, yeah, that's
That's your
just
color.
color, and we don't have the actual. We typically don't want the applicant to accept the actual material because of our filing system. It just takes too much room.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that light color is the color of the metal instead of that dark gray?
This is the siding.
Okay, what is that?
That's the sheet metal wall panel.
We can have the applicant
Okay.
Yeah.
answer that
can you-
question.
Mr. Wong, I had a question. I don't know if I asked this before on this project or not. The height deck is determined by the average top of curb, right? But when the property slopes backward, especially in one corner in one of the survey that I see, there's about 5 feet of difference from the west side to the south side. Now, by just looking at the numbers that has been provided, that build-up common area is about 8'2" high from the ground, plus a railing on top.
Which sheet
which
number
sheet?
are you on?
Sheet 1, where it says in the corner, the common area, space number 1, that area, that platform is about 8 feet high from the adjacent grade. Then we have a 3.5 foot of guardrail on top. Is that something that we should be considering?
There, are you referring to the height?
Yes, the
You're
height.
expressing concern over the height of the retaining portion?
Retaining portion, whichever. I mean, the garage is extended to the property line. I thought those walls cannot exceed more than 6.5 feet from the adjacent grade.
That is the portion on top of the retaining portion.
Let's say in this particular, you have the concrete deck for the garage, then the property slopes backward, then you have a 3.5 feet. So overall height in that corner becomes almost 11'2" at the corner with the railing.
That's true, but per the zoning code, the retaining wall requirements or regulation is more generous as opposed to retaining wall heights in hillside zones.
All right, then taking that account, how do you calculate the height in this particular case for the building? Do you calculate it from the lowest corner of the
Yes,
building?
it's still measured from the lowest point.
So is that my lowest corner?
No, it's those at the deck level, not the, for the building.
Southwest corner.
Southwest corner, because I'm looking at the elevation there.
Huh?
It says 469.70. That's about 5 feet difference or 4.5 feet difference in the height of the building, if we count it from there.
Which sheet are you seeing that height on?
4 on the survey. 469.70 is the elevation. Because you call out the building height, or the applicant calls out the building height at 35.6. In other words,
And that's you're saying that is
in other words,
that's not the highest point.
yeah, that's not. So if this is my rear elevation, my grade that he's showing is somewhere in here. Which puts it way over 38 feet or so.
But wouldn't they measure from the average height of the curb?
That's what I wanted to get a
The
clarified.
average top of curb is for the determination of
The
how
deck.
much the garage
The deck.
sticks out,
Okay, then the building
determine where
is
it's
measured
for.
off the
the lowest point. Yeah.
point, right?
So there's two distinctions there.
So in this particular case, do I count the height from that corner that I'm
The
speaking
lowest
of?
point, if that happens to be, yes, where
Okay.
you referenced
the-
before, if that is the lowest point, then that would be where we would measure the height.
Right in here.
So the lowest point is 469.70.
Of the
Yes.
deck.
No,
No,
of the
of the
grade.
grade.
At grade.
But also, if that is simply a retaining wall and and the actual grade, the new grade, the finished grade is next to the building, then
what
that
I'm
would
saying.
not be the true height. Just like
it would be
just like a
measured off
project
the
in a
deck.
hillside zone, where if you're over height, you can actually build a retaining wall to help reduce the height.
I think the deck is sticking way up, pretty high up there. I don't know. But we'll ask the applicant if necessary. Anything else, board members? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. I have the applicant, Jay Lee.
Good evening. My name is MJ Lee, 2500 Wilshire Boulevard, 834, Los Angeles, California. I'm a designer of this project, and this project was returned for redesign last September with the board members' comments. After the meeting, I started to incorporate board members' comment, but I realized I cannot achieve required additional open space area with the current design. One of board members advised to check with the building and safety about having exit stairs at side property, and then building and safety plan checker confirmed we need a 10 feet height wall for fire protection. But this is not allowed by planning departments. So only possible location for stairs is the front yard, but it's still reducing additional open space. So also I happen to include the side yard setback as a part of open space accidentally. So after taking out these spaces, additional open space will be less than required. So I decided to reconfigure layout and found out a solution by making open garage instead of private, individually enclosed garage. So by doing that, I was able to push a building towards the back by eliminating bridge. So now our front setback is 34 feet instead of 28 feet 7 previously proposed. So also this change enabled me to add mezzanine at the 2 middle units because one more parking space can be provided by changing parking layout. So basically, our whole design concept has not changed, and then there are and then this provides much more continuous open space filling at front yard. So I believe design has improved a lot compared to previous version. Thank you.
Any questions?
It's being relocated, and if it's being relocated, the retaining walls are worked around it like it's going to stay.
So currently the power pole is like 18-inch offset towards our property. So that impacts the clearance of the building. So I work with Glendale power supply, and then they allow.
All right, thank you.
So on the material board of the gray, the light gray, I think you ran out of ink on this one.
Oh yes, this is. Not the entire face.
Could you come up here and show us where?
Mr. Malikian, can you?
And this entire the massive area, and then black dark bronze only focusing on the fascia and it's a trim only.
Left,
That's
it's a
correct.
silver color.
That's correct.
How does that reflect on the south and west facing? Is that going to be a reflection issue?
Reflections.
Sun on it, like
You
blinding?
mentioning. Maybe you can make the aluminum sheet more matte finish to reduce reflections. I think that's possible.
Because that could be a problem.
But this comment that not, I didn't get it before, so maybe there's a chance.
No, I'm just saying, I don't know that I saw that before, but
Yeah.
it's coming right now, so.
But I think using a map would be one solution. Also using anti-glare.
We can talk about this, but I'm kind of sold on your renderings, the renderings that you have. It just having even the new one. In my opinion, I think you're.
Are we on? Mr. Lee, can you come up to finish?
I guess I just have to speak out. So the question that I had and the concern, or not a
concern, but my suggestion would be is to follow the rendering. I think what you've done is, as I was complimenting you of meeting all the requirements, in my opinion. what you've successfully done is to, in those perspectives and volumes that you've created, it stands out. The volumes stand out. So it's creating some interesting areas and effects to this.
Boxes that are being merged into each other. So in my opinion, I think a more bolder color of these dark, in my opinion,
I would rather see that than what you have. I think that's the latest one, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. So I mean you can kind of see the difference. That one is a little bit lighter gray than this one. I think a darker gray, it really brings out these volumes.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be pretty much my biggest comment on that. Other than that, I think everything's fine. As far as wrapping those metal onto the side of the
diagonal or angled roof elements there, as staff suggested, it's fine.
I would be also okay if we'd actually be darker colored wall to kind of accentuate that. But I think if it's possible to be able to wrap those metal pieces, I'm just afraid that
it's going to start competing with a lot of these volumes that are there, and then it's going to start competing with the front, those two, the square and the more of a
elongated section there. So that would be my only comment on that.
Is that a recommendation? The metal's okay, but if they used a paint that matched the
I
metal.
think a darker paint color. I think I would probably suggested in their material board. I think I would go with a little bit of a darker shade, more closer towards the perspective.
But you're talking about just the gray volume.
Yeah, the volumes and also that angle. So you can use the same gray. Different depth and different angles are going to give you different shades of
gray. So that's not the issue. I think having a darker gray would be a better.
Follow up for the reasons. But how do you do it if you do put the material in there, because those volumes wrap to this mass? It just stops there if it's a different material, or we're going to do the color all around?
Oh, that's a different place.
Yeah, but that's the volume that we're speaking of on the side where it wraps around.
Well, that's what I think it's just
going to start creating this can of worm, and it's just going to go around. Where do you stop? So in my opinion, I think as it is, it's
fine. But if you have
maybe a lighter rear surface. Yeah, it's a borderline there.
Then you don't have to worry about wrapping all the way
All
around
the way
to
to
the other
the.
side.
Another option could be, since we're talking about this one specific thing,
Kind of keeping that shed roof of a metal clad, and then on the side elevation stucco is maybe create more of a pronounced kind of coping edge to it, so the metal comes, turns the corner, and it kind of has these cantilever kind of canopy that comes off the side, and then it's like a natural turn to the thing, and then that's another way of doing it.
where then you're not putzing around of trying to figure out where you end the continuation of the color.
I think that's good, good option.
Anybody else has a question? Are yours, so when looking, let's say, at your rendering perspective, this area here, like this wall, is that a 2x6 framed wall, or is that a 2x4 framed wall?
I haven't sized it yet, but normally 2x4 is enough for structure wise.
But there's a reason you can exercise well, if you some of your details show a recessed window on page 19.
Oh, recessed window that's flushing inside instead of using the flushing window, not lurking window.
That means recessed window.
And so
That window detail on page 19 on the top left, which situation is that referring to in the project?
Well, recessed window basically that's where the window makes it or
New cladding?
where it's got that bezel around it, is that?
Yeah.
For example, here, is that the only area that's recessed at this
yeah, at this point. Other software area, there will be level 2 window.
And so,
that green sheet area which I was pointing at earlier, it's basically going to be a straight wall with a window, a 2x4 framing as proposed right now with no recess in the window in that area. Yes, in this area, there's no recess right now.
Oh, definitely not. And that carries out through the whole thing, not just one side.
Where the window maybe the stucco that's a now window, no area.
Where window maybe the cladding, that'll be a recess.
Very good. Thanks for clarifying that. I just wasn't sure where that detail was in reference to. And before you had pronounced downspouts, which was kind of a nice way of playing around with your cube
and your shape and your geometry. I noticed that now you've taken out those kind of accents which used to be downspout. Are these still in the project that's not depicted, or have you basically now inserted them inside the wall? Or are they now more into the
I like to use the downspout as a design element because I had experience when you put the downspout inside a wall, it's closet, and makes nice.
It's particularly filled with 2x4 walls.
Yes, before we display.
And so, are we then to assume that they are going to be the downspouts?
Yes.
Okay.
I have no other
I have a question. How do you access to the from unit 3A and 3B
to the common area?
Back the rear unit? How do you access them? Yeah, how do you access the common area from unit 3B and 3A?
Here's that type of
That's the car. That's okay. That's not going there. If I look at the landscape plan.
Unless if you're stepping through.
The bottom left is the new landscape plan.
Oh, that's me.
They have a pair of doors in the dining room.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the landscape plan, so I'm going to go over the grass.
or whatever that's covered. That feature is something that it looks like we didn't catch that in our review. Normally, we don't like to have access from units that abut the common space directly into the common space, because then it makes the common space more like their backyard rather than true common space.
Okay.
So my recommendation off the cuff would be to replace those two doors with windows.
From the rear elevation.
The rear elevation.
Get to the common. There's
Along the side, like people from the other units.
So they have to get out of the building and then come around the building and go back out?
We used to have the gap because we used to have space under the bridges before.
So now you have no access to that common
Maybe
area.
we'll have to make a special dispensation.
Here, since it doesn't make sense to leave the building to get to your common area. So.
Plus, it's at the rear and it's not really off of the main common area. Yeah, and there's other common spaces in front, so I think it's okay.
Looks like it would have access. This would have access, but here, this one has access to this, then you have to come through. Not right in here.
Is it possible for us to see a bird's eye view of this?
Section over
Yeah.
here.
So actually, the corner, you have to run the door, that's how many? Is that part here? They will push forward the other way.
But here, that's like a one little yard.
If you have to see that, that's not a problem.
We need to create some. We'll have to discuss that in between us. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm trying to, I would ask our landscape architect to help me with this. So along
West, I guess it is. Yeah, southwest corner where we have the common area.
there's some planting there. Do you feel that they're only providing 42-inch high guardrail? And it's right on the property line, and I was trying to see the bird's eye view, and it's exactly to the backyard of the other unit. Do you think that we should have some sort of a screening or some
Sort of a planting there, or even raise the railings to 6 foot high? Or
in front of it, if that fencing in front of those railings.
Yeah, but those hedgings, that's what I wanna know, if the hedgings are like this high, but.
What my question to him was going to, our discussion was, he has not indicated the height of the planter area.
There's actually, there's a section.
That's why I asked those questions earlier.
It's right here. Like a 2 foot high. Or 1 foot or whatever it is.
No, it varies, in the back it varies.
Yeah, but,
What page are you on?
I'm on the landscape one, it varies, but that's easy to find out. What the-
If it's bamboo in the planters, yeah, all of the perimeter planters are bamboo, the Alphonse Carr.
I can tell you what that deck height is, so I'll give it to you right now.
We have a section, and that didn't indicate, so we just need to.
7.9 is the deck height.
47.
7.9.
Almost an 8 foot tall retaining wall.
That's what I questioned earlier.
So on an 8 foot tall retaining wall.
Plus you have the railing on top.
But okay, so.
It's way up.
So if you put tall things, you end up with 20 foot tall vertical wall.
So backyard of that house has an 8 foot wall with another 42 and 39.
Only on that
More
corner.
transparent, only on that corner. Because as you go further towards, there's an existing house and so on and so forth. So height is 40 or 8 feet. The other end is, 4 foot high.
Well, I think that area should be softened by maybe widening the planter, having steps flowing over the top as well as vertical to help screen from the house. Because if you raise it by that.
I have two concerns. One is the screening. Obviously, they're going to build a wall there. They're not going to have room a foot away to go and stack their wall. It's just going to be a lump of concrete, like the ugly thing there. So, some sort of a planting in that 1 foot section, I think would be maybe.
And not only that, you got a common area, which is now you got
people standing there, foot away, looking down into their backyard. I'm just more concerned about the neighbor in the back. So maybe that I'm just the direction that I'm thinking is maybe you want to have a kind of a green screen or green wall or some sort of a wall there. It may actually make the wall on the back side taller, but it may eventually give them a lot better privacy there.
Could you zoom in?
Yes.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah, thank you.
And maybe bringing that in as a rectangle that is not accessible by people and plant that area as well, which would bring it further back. Yeah, because it is a common area, we could do that.
So, what, I guess my last question is, I guess we have to speak loud. The hatching that you're showing in the garage plan, is that a backfill?
It'll be backfill.
So you're building that entire back area, building that up so that you have a level back area. So we can theoretically cut that planter area out and plant those trees and basically push that retaining wall back another foot or two. Because then plant those trees. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a filled up grade.
Yeah. It is possible.
So I'm just more concerned about the neighbor in the back. It's not really impacting, obviously we're gonna have I think it's more of a properly planting that area.
Better. Well, the other thing that helps Mr. Lincoln is he's got railing all the way across in the back.
Maybe we can make a solid wall,
Yeah.
to break it down.
So he can play around with some of the features there that I think is gonna make it a little bit better.
If you're suggesting that we push the wall further north so that there's more space between the property line and the wall, that space would become de facto part of the backyard of the adjacent neighbor. The property, the owner of this building would have to could maintain any landscaping there. It would be in the neighbor's yard, even if it's truly on their property. So that could be necessarily okay.
Does it have to be a full height retaining wall? Should it be a partial wall?
Yeah.
And step back a couple feet and then continue to wall it and then plant it?
Yes, you could do
But
that.
someone's got to maintain that planter.
You can climb over a rail.
You could have a ladder of some sort, I
It doesn't have to
guess.
be, I mean, you could have a 5-foot wall and a 3-foot wall set back, and with a railing, climb over that.
Is the main goal for privacy? Well, not to affect the neighbor as much.
To
with
have
a
such a
large
tall,
wall.
right.
I wonder if we should move something a foot and still have a vertical, whether it's bamboo or something else.
Yeah, but how do you maintain it if you go back there? I mean, it's going to be a problem maintaining it.
Well, I think if we do 2-stepped walls, right, and then there could be a gate in the guardrail, you open it, there's some sort of a full ladder that comes down, and then you might access it from the garage, even. Possibly.
But then that takes away from the common area. And then you're stepping it down. But again, we can discuss it.
I have
any
one
more questions?
I have one last
But you
question.
just do it in a corner area, because you don't want people right up against that wall looking down on the neighbor. So it wouldn't have to be clear cut.
Kind of furthering this thought of the common open space, and right now we have the common open space really at the rear. And there's also some other opportunities as well to create open space, and I was wondering what your thoughts have been and what you considered so far. We have a 34-foot front setback, which is of course way more than the required 20 and average 23. What? Yeah. So, you know, whether it's 8 feet or 10 feet or whatnot, there could be an opportunity. Certainly, let's say, carving out and creating more common open space in the front. Now, whether you want to label it as common open space or whatever you want to label it as, but it's going to be usable interior space. As opposed to just creating this artificial large setback. Not only, it kind of creates two things. One is the prevailing setback becomes somewhat awkward when you're looking at the total street facade. And secondly, is we do have an opportunity to create more usable open space very easily in this area. So I was wondering what your thoughts have been on that.
Actually, if you can refer to the landscape plan, and then that depicts more articulated landscape area with open space. So, which 5, LT1? 5.
Yep.
That leads me to the question, follow up on it. Is common area permitted in the front setback?
What's required?
Well, this is required because he's increasing the density to 6 units. Yeah, those additional open spaces beyond
The setback.
setback.
And so when you refer me to LP1, can you walk me through that? I'm at sheet LP1. What should I be looking at?
Yes. We have create little round bench area, as you see, the landscape area. And then one side, a little bit of with the hedges and then grass. The other side is pretty much plain. So I thought you put in 2 different the scenes for the open space area, and I thought that was enough for the front.
Can you come up and point it to me? I'm sorry. Thank you.
I don't understand what you're talking about the front.
Well, I think you're on the right path. You pointed out that you have used part of the front setback by creating usable open space in the front. Can you just walk me through it of where it is and how you access it?
In terms of access, basically, to the podium, using the little path, winding path. And then, when I discussed with the planner rather before, we providing this open space beyond required minimum such as that. And then he doesn't want any area between the parking, setback and the additional open space. So we try to work with the landscape architect to play this 4 areas to one kind of open space. So it's to this entrance slope is like a 0.75 slope, so they can access directly from this level towards this way. They don't have to go out and come back.
And so this lawn area, you envision this as kind of being usable open space where people can walk on it?
Yeah.
As opposed to the rest of it, where it's depicted in the pink trees and the dark green, there's more shrubbery, ground cover and whatnot, you're not gonna walk on that.
Oh, you mean you may just provide more usable open space?
No, that's not where I'm going with it at all. I was wondering if it was usable, and you're pointing it out that it is.
Right.
And okay. And so, do you have to actually exit out of the building fence, the gate, to access it? Because that's the way I'm reading it. Have you thought about ways of integrating it into that courtyard? Is there ways that you thought of that you could of connecting access like this? So if you were the toddler, you were a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and you want to let the 2 or 3-year-old run around here, is there a way to kind of rework the gate somehow where there's more access to it?
So I'm just wondering if you could try to eliminate the gate and fence and sort of creating a problem.
Well, it's always nice to have a gate at a multi-family building, security, yeah. And it's also nice to, when you create some sort of an open space, to have access to it. And so, what we're having a situation is you have your common open space, which is more towards the rear, which helps units 3A and 3B. But the front units, it's almost like they got to go, all the way back there to really start enjoying the common open space. Whereas then you have ample space in the front to utilize, and that's where my comments are going towards. Is how can we integrate that area which we've already created, which is already worked out with the berm and access, etc., into making it a little more of a usable open space.
Maybe I can make this a little more wider in this area, so the kids can direct access from this area towards here.
I think he's trying not to divide the setback from that, but if you did it on one side, I don't think that would be an issue. You're not taking a fence clear across. Could you use that whole grass area as an integral part of the...
And it doesn't even need to be fenced completely. It could be more landscape hedges around it of some sort to create a barrier.
Especially over by the driveway.
Right. When we created the space, it's there, it's usable, it certainly would help the project.
Would the secure gate stay where it is?
No, that would be pushed back to the 26 feet. I mean, without designing it and asking rhetorical questions to try to point out.
On projects like this, we always want to minimize any kind of fence and gate kind of stuff, and to push that forward, we have to have fencing running along the sides, perpendicular to the building, creating kind of a little prison yard kind of looking thing.
This is high space fence and gate.
Could be. Or you could certainly do it out of landscape. It could be a planter that kind of outlines it, like a 3-foot planter that outlines it next to the stepping stones that have some sort of landscaping in a way you've already now created some sort of a barrier. Of course, someone could jump it, but you could jump anything. And so now there's a barrier between the two, but it's a soft barrier. And now you just got to worry about some sort of a connection where it's easily accessed, where it just becomes more useful. And I think they'll greatly help the project.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? So I close the public hearing?
I have one question for the, one more simple question. Because you redesigned the garage area, which you defined the garage area traditionally, the refuse plan seems to have been redesigned as well, where you have the refuse next to the foyer, and it looks like, and my question is, the idea that refuse will be taken from the units, taken down through the elevator, through the foyer to the trash pit. But there's no chute, there's nothing like that in the design. So I'm assuming that trash is manually removed.
Right.
Got it, okay. And have you checked with the city on the requirements for having that bin then taken up to street level?
Oh yeah, they usually bring the small truck and they bring it out.
Okay, and if they're okay with the place?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That was my only question.
But you lead me to another question on the refuse. So the only way I can get the trash out is
Through the elevator, correct? Or the stairs.
Or the
What
stairs.
Bottom left?
Here, yeah, but that's only for unit 1B, unit 2B, and unit 3B. Unit 1A, unit 2A, unit 3A is going to have to go clear outside, go back in to the
The
stairs.
first level plan doesn't show the unit numbers. I always have the hardest time finding out.
0.
Yeah, but you walk around the house.
Well, we've got a barrier. Unit 2B and 1B kind of just come out like this and go up.
Kind of the same issue getting to their cars. When you get in your car, you can bring the trash with you.
Okay. Well, that's something to think about. Anything else? Okay, public hearing is closed. Thank you. Let's start with, Mr. Chairman, are there any other stuff? No, I don't see anyone here for elk? I see none? Start with you. Or you have anything else?
No, I think I've said everything. So are we closed?
Yeah, we'll public close.
So, I appreciate the applicant kind of going down the list of all the issues and things that addressed the property exactly the way they're supposed to. Met with her and met with the city staff and the different departments. I think indirectly, I think it would definitely help them in the long run. As far as the condition that staff has recommended, I'm more inclined to go with the recommendation rather than a condition. I would suggest in dark, if not what you suggested. And I think in overall, I think it's a nicely done project. I'm a little bit concerned about the back corner in regards to the landscaping, only because that's the only open area that is abutting. The rest of the property is abutting structures, so they will have a lot of open space between the buildings and the retaining wall. So I think overall, I would support the project, and the only condition that I would require or present to the project would be the dark, go with the colors that is more consistent with the renderings rather than the board.
You mean the earlier rendering rather than
Even the later rendering is fine as well. The material board is very light. Very light, so in my opinion.
Thank you.
I will join in those comments. I think this is a very well redesigned project. I think we took a lot of what our concerns were last time and addressed them very well. I think the front redesign is a lot of what we were looking for. I am concerned about the rear, but I think that can be addressed with some landscaping. I don't think that that would be too much of an issue. And I support the project.
I applaud you for listening and taking the changes. I think the courtyard area is much more enhanced, and I like the front design with a setback. I'm glad you moved the driveway over to the side. I also am concerned about the corner landscaping. I think it should be addressed with the 2 levels of walls, however you want to figure that out. And that we specify the planters that are around the perimeter that just say vary in height. I don't see any height listed, so our normal comment is that they be 6 inches higher than the box size plants that are being used in those areas. I think that's the only comments I have, but I do support the project.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
I support the project as well. I certainly appreciate all the efforts that have gone in. Remember the first time around, it was a very well-designed project. It just needed some fine-tuning, and I think that's exactly what's occurred, and the project has benefited quite a bit as far as the connections of the materials, etc. Without rehashing things that have already been said, I very much agree with the darker siding color, and I also agree with the fact that the shed roof, either with color or with some sort of a coping mechanism to create that transition. That's a good idea. I think it's nice that you are going to have those downspouts as more of an accent material. That's the way you had it in your first design. That was very nice. It's kind of a fun yet sophisticated way of dealing with some of these hues and transitions, especially with the accent colors, with the dark colors. So I suggest that you do continue that, put them in the drawings, and really emphasize them. And the last comment is that, and the most important one as far as I'm concerned, is that we always focus quite a bit on common open space, and this project in a way has a common open space at the rear, and they're kind of bifurcated. If you're going from the right to the left side, it's kind of hard to do that because of the way the landscaping is, because you got to really climb over stuff to get there. So in a way, it's separated, which is fine because you kind of created separate open spaces. But the units in the front, 1A and 1B, could definitely benefit from having some open space, which you've already done. It's already integrated in your landscape plan. So I think it'd be very important to create kind of a planner along the walking stones, along the pavers here, creating a boundary there, and then in a subtle but very subtle yet meaningful way, have a connection to that center courtyard. And I think the project will benefit from it greatly. It doesn't need to really be in the front setback. You have plenty of room, some 10 feet or so, maybe even more to play around with it. And it will be a big benefit to the project, because I wouldn't want to really walk around to the rear to those corners as the only common open space. It'd be very, very conducive to have it in the front, especially people with younger children. It'd be great to have them run around in the front, and the parents could sit down and enjoy themselves as one. You already have some details worked out as far as the wood benches that are kind of built into this planter type of a setting on LP1. You could really integrate that detail along that planter, and in so doing create a very nice entryway. So I think that, to me, I think is something that would benefit and should maybe be a condition. Besides that, I support the project. Job well done.
One comment. I just want to add that we put on that the aluminum be a matte finish, because there's no reflection on the adjacent houses.
Okay. The dark matte finish color. Dark gray.
There's some light on it.
But I think the way we're leaning towards is getting rid of the light and going with the darker.
I just want to avoid any reflection.
Did you want to add a film of some sort, or?
No, we're going to darker color.
For the windows.
Thank you. Here it goes to the metal siding, not the glass.
Well, my comment, I think we said it all. I concur with my colleagues' comments. I think mass and scale has appropriately been addressed. You've listened to our comments and you've addressed them well. We appreciate that. But one comment that I don't think we included is the balcony railing should not be all rail in the back. It should, kind of make some solid fencing there, so sort of eliminate overlooking the neighbor or whatever space or in the back there. Other than that, I'll take a motion.
I'll move to approve the project with comments and recommendations.
Conditions?
Is there,
It's always useful for us.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the back, so. Two issues at the rear elevation of the podium wall can be addressed in terms of not creating an overbearing wall and then also creating privacy between the neighbors. So the condition would be something along the lines of provide two-level two-section or two-level wall, so that the wall steps as it rises in height, it steps toward the north. And then the landscape screening in the planters adjacent to the south property will be of sufficient height and density by privacy for the neighbors. Is the bamboo as proposed inaccessible, or is that too tall, do you think?
No, it's not in a large planter, so we can restrict the planters or stuff going with.
Okay, so we'll keep the bamboo. For the metal siding at the upper volume, or for all of the metal siding, a darker matte finish, kind of darker gray color will be used as shown on the rendering. The front common area in the front setback, or just past the setback, will be made more accessible and usable by the residents by placing benches along the setback line at the location where the stepping stones are proposed. And then also the entry area at the gate will be, the paving will be redesigned to make that area flow so it's better integrated and more obviously usable, but the gate will remain as shown on the drawing. The downspouts that were shown in the earlier version will be reintroduced into the new approved version, and they'll be painted in a way to emphasize them, to make them more prominent as design features rather than hide them. And the metal cap on the shed roof elements will be redesigned, and this could be either a condition or consideration. You want to, either way?
Yeah, consideration.
Consideration, and then it could either be wrapped over the top to match the height of the canopies on the rest of the building, brought down to the roof level, or done with a paint color that matches the metal as a consideration. And I believe that is everything.
The color of the benches?
Yeah, I got that. The matte finish, dark gray, similar to the rendering.
There was a motion by Mr. Marakian. Is there a second?
Mr. Palmer seconded.
Oh, so this is roll call. Mr. Tarkin?
Yeah. Sorry, did you mention the railing on your conditions?
No. Actually, did everyone agree that the railing should be a solid fence material?
Not all.
Not all. The fence height is at the south.
At the south, yes.
Or portions of it. Just a common area of the railing. Okay, so we'll have that.
Okay, so there was a motion by Mr. Marakian and Ms. Palmer to approve the project with conditions and recommendations. This will be roll call. Mr. Tarkin?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Marakian?
Yes.
Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
And Chairman Martin?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay.
We go on to the next case.
Okay. So the next item before you is case number 1417409, located at 1651 Glorietta Avenue. This is the first time submittal for final review. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 3,700. Thank you, Brett. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 3,774 square foot, two-story, single-family residence and a detached two-car garage, along with solid patios, pool and spa on an 18,000 square foot lot. The property is owned R1, floor area ratio District 1. The existing house was constructed in 1939. It is 2,140 square feet, one story with a detached two-car garage. Both buildings will be demolished in order to construct the proposed project. There are also numerous oak trees on the subject site, but the proposal will clear all the tree canopies and will not impact the trees in such a way that it will it will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not impact the trees in such a way that it will. It will not i possibly harm them. In terms of site plan, as you can see on the site plan, the three homes from along the east, the two homes along the east and the west of the properties are set back differently. The one along the east is closer to the property line than the neighbor to the west. Therefore, the applicant is proposing to construct a new house sort of at a distance between the two existing homes that adjoin this property. We believe that this setback is appropriate. It's at 28 feet. The minimum required front setback is 25. So as I stated, the house will be situated toward the front, while the pool and spa and garage will be situated at the back of the house. In regards to mass and scale, staff believes that this was successfully addressed by the applicant. As you can see, the second floor is stepped back from the first floor along the front and the side elevation. The front elevation and rear elevation are further broken up into smaller volumes, expressed under the different tables. The front elevation also features a defined but subdued covered entry, which is essentially created by the roof overhang. And overall, the project achieves the appropriate mass and scale and is consistent with its neighbors. So the proposed house is designed in a contemporary interpretation of the craftsman style. There are other two-story homes within this neighborhood, so this is appropriate in terms of its overall volume. The windows features both, actually the house will be clad in both vertical and horizontal siding, and the windows will be groupings of hung fiberglass windows. Some will have panel patterns, and some will be clear pane, and they are grouped up singly, double, and in three-part window system with a fixed central panel. These windows will be installed recessed. Other decorative features include the attic vents, vertical sidings and beams under the gables, as well as the brick veneers. Staff believes that the detailing and the material are appropriate to the Hilton style and reflect quality and it adds quality to the overall design and detailing. So we recommend approval of the project with 6 conditions. They are: 1, the width of the column base of the salad loggia attached to the garage should be reduced to achieve a proportion scale that is appropriate to the proportion and scale of that building that it's attached to. 2, incorporate 2 separate windows rather than the paired windows at the west second floor bay at the front gable to enhance the window pattern. 3, remove the column tiers at the front porch from the proposal, as they do not appear to add or necessary to the front entry. And also 4, limit the number of
light fixtures so that they are focused along the entryway. 5, the second floor balcony deck should be appropriately screened to attain a level of privacy onto the adjoining west property. And 6, the pool should be moved as far as possible from the west property line so that the canopy will not
interfere with the new pool. And that concludes my presentation. And also to add to the record, staff received 1 written correspondence via email from the neighbor to the west.
I do have a question. So I'm trying to understand the square footage, which is the correct one. So in your in the neighborhood comparison, it states that it's 3,774 square feet.
In the plan says 3,774. and it says floor area ratio is 0.30.
It's because the lot is over 10,000 square feet, so essentially because the project, the site is located in floor
Area ratio district 1, you allow 30% of the first 10,000 and 10% for anything after.
So it's not really 30%, but it's hard to sort of manage that.
Okay, so it's actually 21%, right?
If you were,
If we do that, but if not, then it's 30% plus,
Essentially maxing it out.
so it's 30%.
So it's actually, if you go with the other direction, if you take the first 10,000, it'll be 3,000, and then you add another 774. So it's actually 30, over
30%, right? Or no? Am I correct? Or it would be less, right? Okay. So
Then the neighborhood survey says 4,068 square feet. So which is,
Yeah, that's the same thing that I
Wrote that up.
so I'm assuming, so this neighborhood survey is, I'm going to toss that, I'm going to say. Okay, that's, I just wanted to clarify.
But essentially what the applicant is proposing is the maximum square footage that would be allowed on that lot.
Any other questions?
while we're on that neighborhood survey, can you clarify the setback on the neighborhood survey? You have it at 25 feet indicated.
Which is the minimum required in this area. You indicated that the setback is 28 feet in your report.
Originally, that was my mistake. Originally, the applicant proposed 25-foot front setback, but in meeting with staff, we believe that staggering or meeting halfway between the two adjoining property would be the most appropriate location to site the house.
Anything else? Back to the staff report, Mr. Duong. You mentioned on the first page irregular shaped lot. What's so irregular about this? Is that a typo?
Well, no. As you can see in the back, it's not really a straight line. It's slightly angled. That's where I was coming from.
Basic rectangle, though. Oh, you mean on the back? Oh, yeah. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
A little skewed at the
Yeah,
back.
it's skewed in the back.
All right.
Story poles are correct? Story poles?
Yes, that was verified by staff before the application was deemed complete.
With that skew, sorry,
That's okay. Go ahead.
with that skew, is the square footage exactly 18,000?
It's short of a survey. That is probably a close to the correct number.
Anything else? No? Mr. Simoni, have a question or anything? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Thank you. I'll go with the architect, Hamlet Zohrabian. Sir. All right.
Yes, good evening. I was going to say good afternoon, but I guess now it's good evening.
We'll be supper soon.
And I apologize, I'm a little bit under the weather. My name is Hamlet Zohrabians. I'm the project architect. For the record, my address is 3467 Ocean View Boulevard, Suite B, Glendale, 91208. The project that we have here, the way our approach was not to change any of the existing feature as far as the driveway location is concerned, the existing location of the structure itself, the garage being a detached garage. And so we've been very sensitive as far as that's concerned. So what is proposed before you is not changing the pattern of the traffic or the driveway. So the driveway will remain location-wise the same. And what we've done is the driveway is going to be improved. If you will, I trust that you have your landscape plans there as well, and also our site plan. It's going to be changed from concrete, obviously, to pavers there. But the house itself, the location-wise, of course, the setback is less than what it is now, but the location-wise is the same. And the location of the garage, if you will be detached garage in the same location. So the driveway remains the same. That's as far as the site is concerned. This is an R1 zone area. The ordinance calls for 25 feet of front setback requirement, and as Rather was explaining, we, in a couple of meetings that we had with each other, we saw it's more appropriate, and it was suggested by the staff to increase that front setback to 28, which is the average of the two other setbacks. Property to the east is 16 feet front setback, and property to the west is about 40, and then the average is taken is 28. So we had to push back the building 3 additional feet to go to 28. As far as the setting of it is first of all, let me, before I forget, the square footage of the lot, it is 18,000. That's how it is in the assessor's office, and that's already noted there, 18,000. As far as the building is concerned, obviously we had to wrestle with the oak trees that are there. So the way we have designed it, we've been sensitive to the oak trees. The arborist from the city has given us a report, required us an arborist report of our own, and we have prepared that report. We submitted subsequently, and the report came out, recommending the project. And the details are here. I mean, if there's any question for a particular tree, I can actually tell you about it. It's a very comprehensive report that was done. There are only 5 oak trees, I must say, but the rest of the trees are not oak trees. There are 2 oak trees in the front in the existing parkway, which is not going to be obviously touched, and they're going to be fenced according to the recommendations that we received. There are 2 oak trees in the rear of the property, which we are staying away from the protection zone, and is depicted there, in your packet, and also in the report that we received from our arborist. There is also another oak tree which is in the west property, our west neighbor's property, and which I was not aware of it, but then we did subsequent investigation, so we depicted exactly the protection zone. That seems to be, we measured it, and it was verified by our arborist that it only brings in about 5 feet within our property. And so what we did there, the swimming pool that was proposed there had a walkway around it. And the swimming pool itself sits back 7 feet from the property line. So it's clearly clearing the overhang of the canopy of the tree itself. The concern was that let's not put any new walkway or anything there. So that's why we have eliminated that. And so the recommendation, obviously, of the arborist is to stay away from the protection zone, and we will not do any landscaping underneath the protection zone. And we will go strictly by the recommendations of the arborist, which is going to have, obviously, the upper hand in doing construction, that he's recommending fences and all of that. So clearly, we are not impacting any of the trees, according not only to me, but our oak tree expert. As far as the house is concerned, we looked at the neighborhood. We didn't want to bring anything that is so foreign. We looked at a couple of houses there that they were nice California bungalows, and some of them are more contemporary bungalows. And there are a variety of architecture there, but we really liked to use a California bungalow. So we've designed it as a 2-story California bungalow, and obviously it is an interpretation which is a more of a contemporary interpretation of it. It's 2-story. And the first level would be the living space. The bedrooms will be on top. And the various features of the California bungalows have been incorporated into the design, as you can see, the detailing of it. We have overhangs that complies to the standard, whatever the bungalows are. The color scheme and everything is not tacky. I think it's very nice and clean. We have white, accents for the facade. And I think when we have colored the buildings there, obviously it might not be exactly the same color, but the color we specified there, I think we should take a look at. But as far as the building is concerned, we have articulated the building, and even further, second time around when we were meeting with the staff, we further articulated, especially the west side wall, which is set back again. Front is setback around 7 feet from the front. I mean, second floor is setback from the first floor in the front. And then, so what we did, we shifted the second floor back to create a covered patio for the family. And there is a terrace which is in the back side. We have depicted on the site plan the existing window locations of the existing adjacent neighbors. And if you don't see any depiction there in a wall, there's no window there. There's certain windows in certain walls. So we've tried our best to accommodate any kind of privacy issue that might be brought up. We'll be open to suggestions. One of the recommendations of the staff that they have recommended 6 recommendations that they have. One of them is that to have some sort of a screening on further screening on that wall. I mean, I personally, of course, this is just a personal opinion. The 3 windows that are on the second floor of the adjacent building is a very high window, and I don't think that there are major windows there. They appear to be like bathroom windows or whatever. So I didn't see myself so much of a concern as far as that is concerned. But we have suggested to add a couple of trees there to screen it, and that will be, the softest I can accommodate that screening without necessarily putting any structure there. But there are other also exercises that I've done. I'll be willing to show you, which will be appropriate to the building itself. But I'll be available for any comments, and I like to see any questions and everything. I'll be able to answer. And also, I must say that the 6 conditions that the staff has recommended, we are all for it. I mean, we don't have any issues with that.
Any questions to Mr. Zarabi?
I have. Oh.
Go ahead, please.
What is the material on the gate going back to the garage?
The gate is going to be just a metal gate, painted metal gate. It won't be solid.
Okay. And then the brick that you have on the house, is that a full brick, a half brick, a
used brick? It will be just a used red brick, but it's a full brick.
It's a full brick.
Yes.
Okay. And then I think that's the only questions I have until we discuss it.
So, in one of the recommendations by the forestry was to relocate the pool. So, have you considered doing that, and is that in the depiction?
Absolutely.
And are you going to be how much are you moving the pool?
Well, let me explain the history behind this recommendation. The forestry inspector was there before the arborist report was prepared. She normally goes there and takes a look at the conditions and then makes recommendations. At that time, we had not depicted that particular tree to the west, which canopy, is basically overhanging our property for 5 feet. Then we went ahead and depicted that, and we further got a report. And I think if you read her recommendation, she's saying that if we are close to the protection zone, then the arborist report should be prepared. So we went ahead of ourselves, and we went ahead and prepared the arborist report. And so the arborist report only says that we should not be within the zone. And what we did remove, when she made that comment, we had that the walkway which was underneath that protective zone around the swimming pool. That we have removed already. So the swimming pool itself, right now, the way it's depicted, is 7 feet from the property line.
Just outside the drip line.
It's 2 feet outside the drip line.
More recently, the city arborist has kind of clarified the issue there, and it's her concern that the leaf droppage from the tree into the pool is going to be an issue. So she's recommending that the edge of the pool closest to the tree be at least 5 feet from the drip line, which would move it further away.
On that note, I understand how the arborist would have some issues with, let's say, encroaching onto the drip line of an oak tree. Of course, that makes sense. But for the oak tree to drop leaves onto a pool of the adjacent property where you're outside the drip line seems to be odd, so I'm wondering.
And you don't have to follow through with her recommendation, but I think it's based on her experience that people who have this droppage problem are very tempted to prune the neighbor's tree for them.
Yes.
And that's where her concerns come up.
Her concern was that the tree came first and the pool came after. It's one of those where we can avoid the problems now.
Black and white.
At least now I understand the logic behind the comment.
No, but if by any means, if you after your discussion, if you find it necessary, we will adhere to that. I mean, if she's going to be asking us to move 5 feet away, right now we are 2 feet away. So another 3 feet away will comply with whatever she's asking, because she's asking 5 feet away from the drip line, correct?
Yes.
So we are 2 feet away. We need to offset it 3 feet.
But that tree is going to keep on growing.
You gotta trim it every year.
In the future.
You got to move your pool every year.
What's the material in all the backyard, all the white on the plan, what is that material?
Which ones, I'm sorry?
All the backyard material?
Those are existing. We're not going to be able to.
No, I'm talking about the hardscape.
Oh, the hardscape. Oh, that would be some sort of a, paving material. I haven't spec'd that.
Okay.
If you suggest something, we will
I just
be.
wondered if you had figured it out.
Something that it would not be slippery, maintenance-free for swimming pool. But since because swimming pool itself is going to be under a separate permit, it's going to be built later on, so that the details are
This
not.
wasn't labeled, so
Yes. Yeah, thank you. And can I just clarify something? I think it's important for all of us to. Commissioner Malikian, you questioned that square footage. What happened was that particular copy that you have there is an old copy. So that 4,000 was like 8 months before. So the new one, which I have, which we had submitted, and somehow in the copies it went there, it is absolutely true. It's 3,700. That's correct. If you calculate yourself the FAR based on 18,000 square feet, it gives you 0.21. And that's something that I already marked here. I think there's a typo that it says 0.3. Okay. So we are 0.21, which neighboring property is also 0.21. There is another property 0.22.
Because my concern was the way that it's written in the
report.
Well, yeah, the neighborhood assessment. Yes. It says 0.3, which, however you look at it, it's not a 0.3.
Correct.
It's either it's over or under. So if we're comparing apples to apples, then I think we should have that properly. Okay.
Yes.
You're on the same note. I know that staff has to check on it. Like the rear property, on this on this plan on this chart, it shows 1335. But when I was out there and what I see in the pictures, that's not a 1,300 square feet house. The rear property.
Let me explain another thing, Mr. Mordian. This sheet that you see there, the numbers that you see there, that corresponds to another plan. It's because the neighborhood comparison.
The mailing list you're talking about. I'm talking about for example, the property located on 1644 Ramona Avenue. That says 1335. When I look at the house, that house is more of a 3,500 square feet house.
This is the plan that you should actually compare with the numbers. Yeah.
Okay.
All the numbers are taken from assessors, office.
But sometimes the assessor is not updated. But that's okay. Any other questions? One question. Have you met with the neighbors, Mr. Zarabian, or with the neighborhood there in this project prior?
When we tried.
Okay.
First of all, one of the things is that our previous planner has since retired.
Okay.
So Chris Baxter was our original planner before. Of course, that was one of the things that we discussed. Okay. And I asked him, twice actually, I checked with him that can we contact the association over there so we can actually sit down and show him the plans and everything. And he didn't get any answers back. That's what he told me.
Okay.
And he said it's very difficult to get a hold of him. That was the answer. But attempt was there.
Attempt was there.
Yeah, I go on the record saying that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Zhang? Thank you, Mr. Zhang. Any questions to staff before we start, before I call up okay. James, Mr. James Yeager.
Okay. Do I just identify myself as James Yeager and continue on, or?
Yes, go ahead and state your address and your name.
My address is 1605 Glorieta Avenue at the end of the block. And I'd like to just make some comments about the style and size that don't really match the neighborhood. You know, it's stated that the style is a craftsman, or now they mentioned California bungalow, and I can tell you for a fact, of the 20 houses they mentioned, not one of them, I think, look like that. And I don't know how they can even say it looks like the type of house that it is. So if we can somehow have time to bring in some pictures, we'll bring pictures of all 20 homes, and you can tell me which one resembles this home. It's really a far cry. Okay, and then it states that the size is not a problem because 25% of the homes have 2 stories. Well, I'm one of the ones that have 2 stories, and none of them are this massive. In fact, there's a size comparison with what's average in the neighborhood. This includes all the houses, and the house turns out to be close to 75% larger than the average size. So, you know, they're blowing smoke. And as far as the setback, you know, it says it's set back far enough. Well, I think there's maybe one house next door that is not quite as set back as all the rest. And it's a very small house, and it doesn't even show. With the size of this house, I think that setback would make a big difference. So actually, I don't know, you know, if this is a final meeting, I'd like to see some kind of continuance so that we can kind of pursue, maybe clear up some of these numbers that are iffy, that was just discussed, and also to kind of, you know, verify that this house just does not fit in with the rest of the neighborhood.
So you're opposing to the...
Yes, I am. I'm opposing to it.
Thank you, Mr. J.
Okay.
Mr. Rhonda Dillon.
Hello, I'm Rhonda Dillon. I'm at 1650 Glorieta, right across the street from this house. Number one, I think the house is too massive. And the reason I say that is that the present house is on a little bit of a rise. And so when we add the little bit of the rise to the second story, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And I'm wondering why we can't have the setback or start the new house where the present house was. But we've come out quite a bit further than what the present house was. Now, you know, we all, I suppose, should not throw stones because my house is a second story, but you don't see it from the street. It's not massive, and it fits in with the trees and the neighborhood, and it looks beautiful. And I'm afraid that this is going to be just an eyesore. I'm concerned also about the pillars, but if that's going to be addressed, I'll be pleased with that. So the setback is what worries me, and it's because it's on top of a rise.
Okay. You live across the street, you said, right?
Right across the street.
Your house is 3,000 square feet or so?
About 31.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Myrna Stanley?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Myrna Stanley, President, Verdugo Woodlands Homeowners Association. I'd first like to welcome the Isagolians to the Woodlands. They're going to love it. I hope this is their forever home. I hope we could just make a few modifications to it. I just have a comment about contacting the neighbors. Common sense just tells you when you're going to demolish a home that's barely over 2,000 square feet, a single-story home, and replace it with a home, two-story home that's nearly 3,800 square feet, and put those story poles up that have been there since before Thanksgiving, folks, that you'd knock on the door and just say, "Hi, I'm your new neighbor," and just say something about the house. And I'm not saying that they had to meet with the homeowners board. That's not a requirement. And we don't want to get in protracted design issues because we're not architects. But it's neighborly, obviously, to contact your neighbors. I have to tell you what a huge issue is, and I appreciate staff and the architect trying to stagger the front setback. But because of the new mass that you're putting there in basically the same place, it exacerbates the mass and what the neighborhood's going to be looking like. And Mr. Charian, as you know, homes are beginning to sell in the Woodlands, and some are being expanded, some are being demolished. The ones that are being demolished, that's fine. That's property owners. They can do that, but we always have the issue of compatibility. If you can possibly get this house to move back, to increase the setback at least 10 feet, it would go a long way to alleviate that perceived mass. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Senate. Next speaker is Ruby Messner.
Hi, may I stay back here?
Sure, if everybody can hear her.
But how are we going to record it?
No, if we can hear her, the mic can hear her. So.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
I live at 16 Avenue, and on your day I'll be there 50 years. I think the house is massive. I have no problem with the design. It's out of place. It does not.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to come down as well.
Angela Shepard?
I apologize. I'm a little under the weather myself. This is our home that we're planning to build, my husband and I, Caro. And I wasn't planning on speaking today. I wasn't expecting this much opposition to our home, and I'm going to try not to be emotional because we really put a lot of time and effort into knocking door to door and trying to reach out to our neighbors. I know that my husband spoke with you across the street because we were hoping that once people saw the story poles, we didn't want to be intrusive, but we did reach out, and we tried to reach out through our architect as well. Because we didn't want this kind of feeling. As Hamlet said, we spent a lot of time surveying the neighborhood and trying to make sure that this would fit in. And we're not trying to build this massive home that sticks out like an eyesore. That's kind of hurtful as well. But we're a family of 5. I have a son that's 10 and 2 twins that are 18 months. I fell in love with this neighborhood because it has these beautiful trees. We're going to have this big yard for our kids to play in. And it reminds me of my home. I'm from the Midwest. But in the Midwest, we welcome our neighbors a little differently than this. So I kind of thought that maybe a few people would show up to have some complaints maybe about privacy, but not just about the design and about their personal feelings on the design. So I hope that you all take that into consideration, what's valid and what's not valid here. And I hope that our future neighbors will think about it a little more. We're not trying to stick out like a sore thumb. We're just trying to have space for our family and a nice home and a nice school. My husband's a physician in the area. That's why we're moving to Glendale. And I used to be a teacher. I wanted my kids to go to a great public school like Verdugo Woodlands. Thank you.
Thank you. Any, I don't think.
I think the architect should have
a rebuttal.
Rebuttal? Okay. Mrs. Arabi?
Obviously, for the record, again, Hamlet Zorabians, project architect. Obviously, it is very important for us what the neighborhood thinks. And my clients, obviously, the family is they're building this thing not as a developers, they're coming in to intrude anything here, but they're coming to live here. So they want to be, I'm sure that it's their desire to be in a very good terms with their neighbors. Some of the issues that neighbors had and then they brought up, I just need to kind of address and see what we say. As far as the style is concerned, the reason that we're saying a contemporary version of a bungalow or a craftsman, if you will, the craftsman is a more defined than the bungalow itself, is because it's not a pure style of the bungalow or pure style of craftsman. We never confess that. But it is something is very, very appropriate, and it's used. I'm surprised of the comment, because right across from us there is another house. It's almost the same style. We have actually employed more details into our house that we're proposing. The comparison that ordinance uses is a linear comparison, 300 foot from the property line to the right and to the left and to front of the building. You can't take the entire thing. That's how they interpret it. Based on those interpretations we approached, and what the numbers that you see is for that 300. The setback issue, 25 is minimum. We have agreed to 28. If the panel feels that we need to set back the building a little bit further or something, then perhaps I can talk to my client to see if we can achieve that. And what I would suggest is that take a look at the average in the neighborhood, which is 32. And so if you can take a look at it, I'm pretty much sure that I looked at the site plan, and we can actually push the building further to meet that 32. So I think that is, we're giving 3 more, another 4. You're talking about total of 7 feet from the minimum. So that's something doable in the interest of good relationship with our neighbors. We also think that it's a great neighborhood. My son lives in that neighborhood. He could have been here, and he's an architect too, as you know. I mean, he can actually speak to that fact there. He loves that neighborhood, I think. And Ms. Myrna, I know her for a long time. And I really respect her and the association. I don't have any issue. I have, honest to God, I have approached through our planner, and did not happen. The setback issues that way. And also, one of the things is also important, that we have not gone to the maximum even height. The height we are allowed is 28. We are proposing 24/7. So we are staying 3 feet below that. One of the plans that we have shown you, we've depicted the profile of the other houses right to the left and right. You can see the transition is very smooth. we're not having something that is just produced that envelope. So I trust that you would consider all these comments. And if there is anything that we can do to improve it, if there is anything that my clients would be able to do to approve the project, we will be very, very receptive to it within a reasonable extent. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to.
I have a very quick question for
the
architect. Mrs. Zorabi, you mentioned that the brick would be a used brick, which is a nice material of its own, because it has that weathered look to it, and they're real bricks. And I'm asking this question not so much to make it a condition or consideration or anything like that, but just to understand. The building itself, when I assess it and the design that I assess it, it certainly is kind of a contemporary craftsman or a contemporary bungalow. It certainly has those feels. It has the horizontal siding. It has basically the differences in the attic space. It has deep overhangs. It has an emphasized entryway. It has the columns depicting the porch. So it has those attributes. And so, but then there's those bricks at the column bases.
Okay.
Have you considered the river rock as kind of a base for those columns in a way it'd be more true to its style? Have there been any discussions about that?
The river rock, with the discussions that we had choices to do, obviously we didn't go to a modern material such as like the ledge stone or something that could have been completely, I think, different. The river rock has been discussed with the owner, and their preference, their choice came to the brick because it's more earthy, and they thought it's more appropriate.
And it's also existing too on the home itself, right? It has,
Yes, exactly, exactly. The existing home has bricks on it, red bricks, and we were trying to stay true to that as well. The pavers will be the same way, but what we chose was a herringbone style, which is a very older version. And then what we're trying to do is that at the edges, actually, to let go of some of the bricks so we can actually have this meandering look where you can grow the landscaping on the side to kind of cover it a little bit, just to stay very soft. That was our intention. I think staff has recommended that one of the conditions was to remove the two first columns in front. And I agree with them. The columns were there because we really wanted to have a prominent entrance, and we used to have a portico on top of that, which we have taken it off based on the recommendations, I think, to soften it. And I agree with them. I've looked at it several times, and I think those columns can come out. And I agree with that. I don't have any issue with that. And that's... If
they come out, then all of a sudden it's a non-issue as far as what the column base.
But I think below I think there are some bricks also that carries itself. I'm sorry.
Stop for a minute. I think the recording is not...
Oh, might have reached the end of the tape?
Could be.
Yeah.
No.
Am I the cat in the TV
cat.
or something?
Winter Ribbons will be played by...
That's the practical joke for the evening.
Chris, maybe turn off the TV, unless you guys want the cat.
I don't know what's on TV.
Obviously a distraction. It's the time bomb, I think.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Right. It's under your seat.
Unbelievable.
We shouldn't joke about that stuff.
Oh, I see. I didn't realize that. If it was in here, I couldn't see it.
Put it.
We're good? Go ahead, Mr. Zarabi.
Just needed a tap.
Right. So we have the columns and column bases in the rear as well.
Right.
I think the comment with that from the staff had to do with particularly the trellis that is in front of the garage, which is not obviously visible from the street. But that was the one which goes with the garage itself, and they felt it's thicker. So we wanted to kind of narrow it down, which we have no problem. I can work with the staff to do that.
But the front columns, if they are eliminated, you have no issue with it in such.
No, I have
in
no
that case, the column bases in the front will go away.
Will go away. Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
So to understand it correctly, you agree that you can push the building back?
Yes. Within a reason. I mean, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
If we go 4 additional feet, that will bring us to the average of the neighborhood, 32 feet.
Okay, so just jumping on that condition or consideration that you suggested, which is admirable. Second floor, there's some concerns about the setback on the second floor. If you just take the entire second floor, but just bear with me, I don't think it's going to affect any of the layout that you have. You have a space between the railing and the door that you enter.
Okay.
So literally not changing the ground floor of the stairs or the opening. So just take that whole thing, just pushing it back a couple of feet. It's not. You're not changing any of those. Is that something that?
Yeah.
I may. That the reason that I'm saying is that rather than pushing the building back, you may be better off pushing the second floor without compromising the. Because to me, I think having the large open space in the front, it's great, but I think pushing the second floor back may actually help you better without changing this whole thing. You have, I don't know if I can draw this in here. If you look at this, literally keep this as it is and just taking this whole thing and
push it back,
sliding it back so that this door comes here. You're just narrowing this section.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good suggestion.
That may actually, I mean, we can talk about that rather than pushing the building, you push the second floor back and without changing any.
Yeah, it doesn't really change the whole thing, but the second floor sets back.
And you're not really tying the, and I was trying to understand the second floor volumes. You're not really tying it into the ridge of the ground floor, so it's really not.
No, it doesn't really matter. I can push it back. It just creates more covered area in the back as well.
One quick other question. I'm trying to understand this, but what's
that's an outdoor fireplace.
So this is a fireplace. So this is further
beyond.
back.
It's beyond. Yeah, it's beyond.
Looking at this, I'm like,
I'm sorry?
Ventless?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's beyond, and we had to depict it. It's not in the front,
Okay,
so.
okay.
Ms. Palmer, did you have a question? Mr. Smith? Oh.
Yeah, I got one last question that kind of correlates with what Mr. Malakian was asking. So what is the existing setback right now between the first floor and the second floor facing the street?
7.
7 feet.
It's actually 6'6".
Yeah.
It undulates.
Yeah.
7 in the middle.
Yeah, exactly.
Couple questions.
Thank you.
On the property line, there is a rise, as one of the neighbors described it, the elevation. Of course, my picture just asleep. Technology is not my friend today. Have you considered grading? I know that you're establishing on the existing pad that was graded for the original home back in '31.
Right.
But have you considered grading to lower the mass?
The reason we didn't is because of the oak trees. I mean, we were very much discouraged in any way to stay away from the roots. And the more grading it is, there's more impact. In the recommendations that it was there, even don't go closer to the protection zone. Somehow the trees are very sensitive, and that might cause other issues. And then so the thing is that even there is a recommendation, if there is a landscape irrigation pipes there, to abandon them and don't try to pull them out. That's the recommendation, is because you don't want to touch it. So grading is going to be, in a sense, it will be a little bit grading, but it's not going to be a major grading as far as that's concerned.
There's also, if you look up and down the block, this entire side of the street has a rise.
Has the same.
You want to break that.
Second question is in reference to the fireplace. Where does the flute smoke, ventless fireplace?
Well,
Is this
It's a direct vent. The direct vent, which is outside. It's just a cap. It's a prefabricated. It's not a huge fireplace that you would see. That it's got to have a flue that goes all the way up.
So this is directly below the patio line.
Yeah, they normally do it in a 6-foot tall kind of masonry.
Yeah, no,
thing.
I've seen them. I was just wondering about the clearance. My mind. Okay, thank you.
You may have to come back, Mr. Zora. I'm going to open the public hearing. I have another speaker.
Sure.
Give us a minute if there's anything you could add to it. But there's another speaker that I want to open up public hearing.
Okay.
And then he can rebut.
We can rebut if necessary.
As you wish.
Is it Kate? Yeah, Katie. Sure. Okay.
She had been in the crowd the whole time.
Yeah.
I've been here.
Audience the whole time.
I've been here. I just was so inspired. I felt like I needed to follow up. Thank you.
Good place to be inspired, I'm telling you.
Listen to what everybody else says and come in at the end.
In at the end. Thank you. I appreciate you being willing to take me. I know that the public comment was closed. So my name is Katie Kurtz. I also live on Glorietta Avenue at 1650, actually right across the street with Rhonda Dillon. I'm a renter. I actually just wanted to make a comment because I was a little disheartened to hear that the neighbors felt that we were not welcoming them because the storyboards have been up for a couple of months now. And me, again, I'm a renter, I'm not a homeowner, but I also feel that the home is a bit imposing and that it is pretty big. At least the way the story poles have communicated to the rest of the neighborhood, that it is probably if it gets built to the scale that the story poles are communicating, it will be the biggest house on the block by far. And I think that's what everyone's reacting to. It's not to the neighbors. They look like lovely people. I'm sure that they're really nice. It's very exciting to have children in the neighborhood. And it's unfortunate that this is the place where the concern about the size of the home is being communicated. And so I agree that it would have been really great had we had a place where we could have asked some of the questions and the neighbors could have heard the concerns, because it's not with them. It's just, I think everyone can agree that having this kind of change in a neighborhood it can raise some concerns in some folks. So anyway, I just also wanted to communicate that again, I'm a renter and I generally don't have a hat in this kind of ring, but it is pretty big, and so just wanted to put that out there. And the style to me is in line with the neighborhood, and all of that stuff is fine. But I just wanted to publicly say, I'm sorry that these neighbors feel that they're not being welcomed. Them personally, it's not them personally at all. It's just I think that it is it would be the biggest house on the block, and I think that's the sentiment that you're feeling today.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zarabian, do you want to add anything? No? Okay.
No further comments.
No. Okay, the public hearing is closed, and I'll start with Ms. Palmer.
Okay. I think the architecture is fine. I think the house looks nice, but if you do look at the story poles, I find it imposing. And I think it's partially because of that second floor not being set back, and as Mr. Malikian stated, possibly moving that whole second floor back, or in any event, I think the entire thing needs to be moved back, or the second floor, but we need more relief, because as the story poles show it, that 7 feet doesn't look like 7 feet in the setback. And the other comment is I'm having a little problem with the balcony or deck in the back. It's a large deck area. A lot of those houses have large backyards, but even the 2 stories don't have decks, and I think that's going to be imposing onto the neighbor's house. And I was discussing that with Mr. Simone, and there's a possibility of making that a trellis or something, that might be more acceptable. And the other thing, if you had the deck, you've got lights up there, and that could be an issue with adjacent neighbors. My other comments, the landscaping plan, you've shown just landscaping in a foot or 2 around the perimeter, and you've got plants that get 8 feet wide. So I think there needs to be more feeling as to how the landscape will tie with the house, and that there not be lawn underneath the oak trees as you've shown there. So just reconfigure the landscape plan so it works with the house, and use more than 4 different types of shrubs so that it'll soften the whole house. And if you're going to remove those columns in the front, that means there'll be no brick at all showing in the front. But if you keep the columns and keep the brick, I would suggest maybe the drive, certain area back, have the brick in it so you reflect that in the hardscape, as opposed to just pavers. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Simonian.
I agree with most of the comments that Commissioner Palmer made. In general, I think the design is well thought out. I do see the contemporary bungalow or the contemporary craftsman in the design, and I think the rendering in itself depicts that quality. And I went earlier and I mentioned some of the attributes of it, which I thought were on. I do also agree that the project could probably benefit by eliminating the columns. It might be one of the few kind of, or maybe one of the only design features which isn't as coherently part of the craftsman and whatnot, especially the way the bases have been treated. And so I do support removing those columns. There were some comments made about the setback and the relief, and that seems to be one of the main concerns of the neighborhood. In the past, when we've seen successful projects and kind of visiting them years after they were built, when the second floor is set back, the more the second floor is set back, the more these homes tend to blend in. It also certainly helps to have some trees planted in the front yard, and as those trees, mature, in a way, they really do end up camouflaging that second floor. Now, whether we prescribe moving the house in its entirety back, or whether we move the second floor back, that's something that perhaps the architect could consider to see which one is a better option. When the setback is increased to 32 feet, which is the average, that is a big setback. And so when itself we have a 32, which the architect has already agreed to, if we set the home back to 32 feet and the second floor offset remains where it is at 7 feet in the middle and 6 feet on the sides, that's one option. The other one is to keep it where it is and move the second floor back. I think they both accomplish the same thing. In essence, they're moving the home back. I think overall, architecturally speaking, they're both going to accomplish the same thing for the neighborhood, to provide that relief. Which direction we go with, I'm sort of indifferent on, I would say. I do think that if we do plant some mature trees in the front, not mature trees, but trees that would ultimately mature, it will certainly take care of that, coupled with the fact that it has the big setback. And I was going to make some comments about the brick bases, which we've all talked about. And so the other thought I had was a clarification. I believe that the windows were fiberglass. Was that mentioned earlier? Okay. And so I was wondering about that, and it seems as though with the details that they depicted the appropriate window trim around it and the windowsill. So I'm pleased to see that. But I support the project if we're able to accommodate that deeper setback somehow. And get rid of the columns in the front to make it more of a true craftsman look or bungalow look.
Let's wait and see what the other comments are, and we'll determine which way should we. Mr. Church?
Sure. I think it's important to understand the neighborhood that this home is in. The applicant has chosen to purchase in the Woodlands. It's a great neighborhood, and it has a specific character to it. I believe this house is too large as designed for the street that it's on. The mass and scale, the proportionality does not fit the neighborhood. I think that a 32, going back to 32 feet and acknowledging that that's an issue is a good start. I would also think that the second floor should also go back a little further to give it a little bit more of a depth. That I think I would advocate for both of those things happening. The oak trees in this area are very old and very important asset to the city of Glendale and also to the homeowners. I would like to see the pool moved the 3 feet that has been recommended. To be out of the drip line and prevent any potential damage to the oak trees. I think that the garage and the garage area, I think, needs to have a little bit more of a. I'll leave the garage comment. I think that the homeowner should consider a refuse plan built into the design here as to where garbage is kept, so it doesn't end up in the site of the neighbors in the driveway area. I think that the balcony is too large and creates lots of privacy issues for the neighbors, which needs to be addressed. And I think that simply creating additional privacy screening is just not going to achieve that. I think you have to think about the trees that you were suggesting on planting, and also maybe scaling that back as Ms. Palmer suggested. I wanted to solicit feedback on some of the eaves and how we thought that would look, but it seems that my colleagues are, who are much better at this than I, as far as the design aspects, believe that this does fit the bungalow style, so I will leave that alone. And then, as far as the selection of paints, I would suggest that the color scheme, once this is finalized, use variations that are not too muted, because some of the beige and tan that was suggested seems a little muted for the overall design. I think some darker chocolate, some darker browns would bring out some features. Lastly, the two other concerns I have is the use of decorative attic vents. I should have asked earlier if that's a prefabricated molding of some sort or built into the property, but that would I would like that to be built in so that it's not an add-on that can look cheap down the road when it fades or so forth. And lastly, the lighting does need to be reduced. There's just too many lights. It's nice to have a nice lit, safe home. However, the Woodlands doesn't lend itself to that kind of bright home in the middle of a nice, dimly lit neighborhood where you would go for a stroll. You don't want to have a bright lit home, maybe except for the holidays with decorations. Those are my concerns. I would like to see some more detail also on the landscaping plan. I join the comments that were made on that. I think that the landscape plan should have more detail as to how it's going to create privacy barrier with the neighbor on the north, and also making sure that the canopies of the oak trees are protected during the construction process.
Thank you, Mr. Charger. Mr. Morgan.
So, when we're dealing with a house that is being proposed to demolish an existing and a new house get reconstructed, it's always a major concern about the size and the compatibility. You know, for me, the size is okay if it fits within, and I think some of these setbacks and some of the other elements that it gets implemented into the project tends to overwhelm the entire project and how it's presented and how it's seen by the neighborhood. It is kind of unfortunate when we have staking done. A lot of times people tend to actually see the stakes and they can't really visualize the massing and the juxtaposition of the facade and the different volumes that are going to be created. I think I'm happy that the architect suggested that the pushing back of the building. I think that definitely will help, being that you know, when a two-story is being proposed, you know, just going back to the size and the neighborhood and within the context of the 300 feet as it's required, there's definitely present other buildings there that do have a two-story volume that are sitting there. I mean, the house right next to 1650, the 1646, the two-story, you know, that itself is an example of what most probably what we're going to get on this one. It probably doesn't have the same setback as what we're going to achieve.
And the house behind it, too.
And the house behind it as well. The positive thing about this project is that it will have a lot better implemented details that we can control. I agree that that the setbacks are essential to make this project work. There are definitely certain areas that can be massaged and improved. But in overall, I think you know, the house is going to be the largest house in the area. But to me, I think if it's situated and sited properly in the in the context, I think it would definitely lend itself to be present in this situation and in the site that it's in. I definitely agree with the colors. The color scheme is, to me, it's a very muted and very bland color. I think a bungalow, or so-called more of a
craftsman,
contemporary craftsman, eaves were an issue for me, and as you mentioned, Mr. Churchian, that if no one has an issue with, I'm fine with. But if it was a true craftsman, then those eaves don't work. But if it is a kind of a hybrid of different elements, then we can kind of forego of that detail. But as far as the accenting and the color selection, I think that definitely will help. I kind of like the gate that it's there, and I think it brings this little bit of a contemporary feel to it. I don't know if it was intended to be more of a cable or a rod, or something with I can just see that stained wood fence with kind of nice cable or rod, and bringing those red and more of a woodsy chocolate colors and different elements there. I think it would definitely bring out the style. But as far as the setbacks and the massing, I think that definitely will help a couple of 100 square feet lowering it, or to meet the square footage that it is right now. It's there. I don't think it's really going to make a difference on that. So I think pushing back the building and setbacks will definitely will help the situation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Milliken. Well, I do also concur with my colleagues on most of the comments, and I want to first thank the neighborhood and the applicant for being here today. When I look at, I'm very familiar with this neighborhood. I lived in Glendale for many, many years, and this is one of my favorite neighborhoods, and it's a great neighborhood. When I look at these neighborhoods, I look at really the context and mass and scale, and the number of stories, the FAR in these neighborhoods. And what I notice on the street, there's established setback. There, if you can Google that, Mr. J,
Yes, sir.
The aerial.
A little hard to see.
Yeah, but on this side of the street, all the setbacks are in line, with the exception of the small house that you see off the corner, and that shouldn't have been done because that lot was split for whatever reason when that house was added.
The setbacks are aligned on this section of the block.
Yeah, on our side, this side that we are.
Except for the subject property, the two adjacent properties.
Right.
Those have three very different setbacks.
But again, across the street has established setback.
Across the street.
Also across the street. And when I looked at all this side of the street that the houses proposed are all in line with maybe 1 or 2 feet of variation. And I take that really seriously, and I like to be sensitive about that. And I think what I'm leading to, and I hope the applicant understands it, is to maintain the existing setback and maybe push the second floor a few feet to make the roof line work better. But I think that the front setback should be maintained. Now, although...
which setback?
The existing setback. No,
existing of the house.
The existing house. Today, because it aligns with everything else on that street.
But clarification, the existing home, the architect said, is at 28 feet, and he wants to increase it to 32.
No. The proposed is at 28.
The proposed is 28. The minimum required is 25, and most of these houses sit back about 35 feet. Yeah, 35 to...
What is the existing, though? The existing home as it
we don't have
it. It's in line with the adjacent building at the west side.
It isn't, though.
That's what I'm saying.
This building is set closer to...
No, that's the east. The east is the small house that we're talking about.
Okay, well, this building is closer to the street. This building's in the middle.
Then this one, then everything else from there on, goes at one line setback. Yeah. I mean, and that occurs on both sides of the street. The only exception is the corner, which is fronting on that small house that was built adjacent.
Was a split lot.
The split lot, which should have never occurred, and that's really creating the issue with the setback.
Yeah.
And I think, I have no issues with. I think the architect has done a wonderful job with the design. I think the pushing the second floor further will even increase. It'll make it fit better. The detailing is fine. Material use is quality. I do agree with the columns should be eliminated, but my major concern is the roof line. I mean, the front setback and the second floor roof. And by pushing the second floor like 3 feet, you'll have full roofs rather than cutting up all these edges that meet the building. And I think that if we push this building back, we'll tremendously improve the streetscape, because you're right, Ms. Palmer, all of you are right about the story poles are being a little overwhelming when you get to the street. The fact of the matter, I think some of you also mentioned that this building sits 3 feet higher, from the south side of the street, so it makes a little further impact. I think they could achieve it. They have enough room to maybe, like Mr. Malikian said, lose a couple hundred square feet, and it will work.
Well, I didn't say lose it, but I don't think it's a couple.
Come tell me.
But I think the setback is my main concern, and I'll leave for that discussion to go further if necessary.
Well, I wanted to get a better understanding of what that average is, and I saw the architect had one of those engineering plans that kind of depicts the adjacent homes or something like that. I wanted to get some feedback on numbers.
Also, if you just visually, you can see from this perspective, this is the subject property setback, and here is the neighbor to the east, and I can't quite see where the neighbor is.
Pull it down a little bit. This whole thing goes up straight. I mean, this whole setback is continuing in one line.
Sure. What I'm trying to point out is if the new house were brought that much forward to the setback, that's a significant.
No, not forward.
Not forward. Push back.
Push it back.
To the west building.
Let me put it this way:
west.
push it back where the existing house is today, where the existing
The existing house today is set back from the prevailing setback on the
Correct.
block.
That's
I thought
what-
you were asking to have it brought to the prevailing
No,
setback on the block. Okay.
I'm
But he was at
trying-
odds with everyone else.
Yeah, no.
Do we know
Think
what the
with everyone.
prevailing setback is?
I don't know if it's in the staff report.
39.
All I'm saying, however that number is put the building where it is today, and I think you have enough room to make it work. And that, in turn, satisfies the neighbors, and you achieve your goal. And,
39.
House is compatible.
then the house is compatible. I don't think anybody's questioning the square footage as much as the front setback, and that's where I come in. And actually, when I went there several times, even though I know the neighborhood, I even saw the story poles before I got the agenda. So I said, this is a little. It's going to be a sensitive matter for everyone to decide on, and I think if we push it, put it whatever it is, 39, 38, and I think the house will work. And the second floor, I don't think it should sit further, as long as those gables end properly. And you can maintain the square footage if necessary. And I'm fine with the style. I mean, I have the detailing, the style, and material. I think you've done a great job. It's just the setback. I think that will satisfy everyone. But if anybody wants to.
If we push the building back 10 feet, then you're not going to have the required backup radius from the garage.
Well, he needs to push that a little bit too. I mean, he needs
Well, you
to.
can't push it into
Oak
the
tree there.
Then
tree.
you got the
Well,
oak
then
tree.
You need to make a 3-car garage if necessary, the other way. Doesn't have to be tandem.
The other way.
I mean, make
Wouldn't
it
be
three.
able to get into the third spot, there'd be no radius,
Right.
or you'd have a
Well,
huge.
I'm not knocking the idea, I'm just
but
practically talking.
practically, okay, there's, even if this house, I mean, the 3,500 is two-car garage, so the difference between the square footage is not that much. Now, to my understanding, correct me again, garages can go up to the property line, correct? Detached garages. That's correct. So we can, shift this garage closer and get the third-car garage if necessary. I mean, I don't want to redesign the whole thing, but there's ways to meet the average setback in the neighborhood. And,
Well, is it average setback or the?
no, I'm sorry,
existing
the existing setback, because that's where,
Turning radius, you're not going to drive in and back out. Everybody's out. They're going to be parking just inside the gate.
yeah. But again, I mean, I'll leave it up to the board member. The board member, if most of you have the feeling that this house should be set back at 32, then be it. But I think it should go back where the existing house should sit right now.
Okay, so we have that noted. You want me to? There's still, I think there are several open questions.
Yeah.
So why don't we just go through the conditions and everyone can weigh in?
I don't think the garage would work.
Why don't we just start with the setback question? I've kind of brought out. There are now kind of four options. One is to push the entire house back 4 feet so that the setback would be 32 feet and leave the second floor where it is. Another option is to leave the setback as proposed and push the second floor back some
What was the
distance.
first option? I'm sorry.
Just moving the entire house back 4 feet, from 28-foot setback to 32
feet, okay.
Keeping the second floor as proposed. Another option would be to maintain the setback as proposed, but push the second floor back. A third option would be to do both of those things. Push the entire house so the first floor facade goes back and the second floor facade goes back.
The third option would be to push the lower level to 32, and then the top level another 3 feet, say.
3 foot rather than 7 foot or something like that. The fourth option is Commissioner Mardian's proposal to keep the existing house setback, which I don't remember what that is, but just where the existing setback line is, but it's considerably set back from the. Yeah, we don't have that number, so you have to just eyeball it. Or do you have it? Would you? If you just tell me, I'll just share it with them.
Existing setback?
Yeah. Okay. The existing setback is 39, so
39.
the fourth option would be to maintain the existing 39-foot setback.
They wouldn't be able to get in the garage.
I don't see it working that well, so.
If we moved it back to the back 4 feet.
The fourth option, I just want to understand one thing. If we're considering an option, we got to consider the ramifications. The way I'm reading it is if we do an option 4, which is moving it to the 39-foot, just simply moving the home back, we're not going to be able to access that garage.
Well, I mean,
and I think it's also important to note that this house is set back more than the other houses on the block.
that's not how I see it. I'm sorry.
No,
to
but
disagree.
elaborate. So I'm trying to understand.
That's not. I mean, if we are pushing this building back and we're pushing the second floor back, a reduction of 200 square foot puts you on a two-car garage. Then
Okay,
there's
so in other words, reduce the square footage under 3,500.
The two-car garage, and the two-car garage is pushed back. Then the whole building is pushed. Then
That's a fifth.
That's a fifth option, because the fourth option was just take the way it is and push it back.
Yeah,
and
but
that's what I'm saying. That doesn't work.
I don't think that was the fourth option was really suggesting that we would just go back as is. I think that you'd have to make modifications.
So that's right.
That. I mean, with my thought is with 39-foot setback, there's a lot of justification and rationale because you keep the streetscape the way it is, and it addresses the mass issues that everyone has concerns with.
I mean, there's different ways to look at it. I think the prevailing setback is a wonderful thing. It really is a powerful tool. And the prevailing setback for mid-block property, so like if a home is placed in the middle of a block and it has 39-foot setback to its left and 39-foot setback to its right, and these homes, there's 5 homes to its right and 5 homes to its left, and it's 39 feet, all of a sudden you go, well, yeah, I should have a prevailing setback. Now, we have a situation, and this is where I'm having a little bit of a problem contextually. In the corner, we have an existing situation where the house is already way below the prevailing setback. And then if we are talking about good planning exercises, if we increase the current setback, which is the home exactly behind that, to 39 feet, now you're really creating an odd scenario planning-wise. In other words, pure planning, pure design, you want to have transitions. So when I'm talking about a prevailing setback, where I'm thinking about it, I think about a mid-block to something at the end a little differently. So a transition is a good thing as well. So option 3, where we have a 32-foot front setback, and then pushing the second floor back another 3 feet to 10 feet, now we really do have a 42-foot setback from the second floor to the street, which is above the prevailing setback. So there are different ways to look at it, and I thought that was worthwhile to bring up too, where it's not just simply a prevailing setback, you adhere to it no matter where you are. I think the transition is an important thing to consider as well.
I agree that the transition is an important thing to consider. However, this property that's on the corner is kind of like an orphan property, and
it's not the corner. There's a corner property, and the house next door is not the corner property.
Yeah, it's the second
not
house.
the corner property.
It's the second house.
It's the second one.
Yeah,
okay.
just
So
clear.
here's a compromise, I think, between the board members and the architect. I think architect agreed that without really impacting the parking, or he thinks that without even looking at it, he can push this back to 32 feet. I think we're trying to design and figure out how he can get into garage and figure out all these issues that it's going to be created. So why don't we just put a condition that minimum 32, try to meet the existing setback and push it back as much as you can, but you need to at least be at 32 feet, and then further back, or somehow we can word this out that they can actually
And push the second floor further.
But doing that, I don't think it's going to impact any of their livable space.
I don't either.
Their backyard is going to still stay the same. Their open space, or that covered area, which we had an issue as far as the balcony above, which that we still need to talk about that. But they're still going to have that seating area, and they're still going to have that covered area. It'll be smaller, but we still need to talk about how that privacy is going to be
The balcony might go away, because once you increase the lower level.
a trellis or a trellis, right? So a trellis or something like that. But 32 feet, I think it's a good setback. But we're talking about 7 more feet than what it's there. So literally, that building is being moved forward 7 feet
from where it is
now. But right now, it's being shown as almost 11 feet. So what do you think, Mr. Mardian?
I'm fine. I was just going to wait until you finish, because I think I want to open the public hearing. I want Mr. Zaharovian to say a few things.
Yes, again, Hamlet Zaharovian, for the record. I mean, obviously all these suggestions and everything, I'm after a solution that will really serve the purpose and will be fine with everyone. The 32 feet, it's doable without changing anything as far as the building is concerned. All it is that the rear portion, I have an extra room there for the canopy area there. That could reduce that, but it doesn't really change anything. Even the column pushes back, and it's outside of the 25 feet required clearance. So I can do that. The 32 is a very doable thing, Second floor, if you want to push back further, maybe 2 or 3 feet that Mr. Malikian was suggesting, is doable again, because the concept is that you have two geometrical shapes that you're just shifting. And what is happening in the back, that terrace, if it's a huge issue and if it's a huge concern, we can actually shorten it. We can go like a 6-foot normal depth, with the rest of it could be trellis. And we can do that if we want to. But so we really want to work this out, in a sense. And 32, to me, it's very, and I completely agree with Mr. Simonian's analogy, because that is exactly used in every other city. And it's a transitional setback is the answer, because that makes it more smooth. You're pushing back a building so much, and when you're driving by, you have the other building blocking it. That's not a good solution to me. But again, I mean, if that would be your solution, that's different. But I can work with the 32, and if it's in case you feel that it needs to be further, I can have other solutions as well. The garage doesn't have to be pushed back towards the oak tree. It could be dealt with.
So, Mr. Zurban, if the first floor is a 32-foot setback, and then the second floor is, say, a 39-foot setback.
Correct.
So would that work with your architecture without creating...
No, 39 is like, you were asking 7 feet setback in addition to 7 that I have already. That's too much.
No, it would be...
No, it would be.
Oh, you mean with respect to the setback itself?
No, 32 will be actually, it'll be actually 42
second floor. All you have to do is
because
push
he
this.
can push another couple of feet back on the second floor.
Correct. So option 3,
which will give the neighborhood the second floor being in the same location as the...
And I just want to clarify, option 3 then would be a 32-foot
for the
first floor setback, and then a 42-foot second floor setback.
Right.
That's what option.
And I think what I was suggesting is to kind of come up with a compromise for Mr. Mardian's solution, is that minimum 32 feet, and if it's possible to push back,
sure,
you know.
I've written a condition that includes provide a minimum 32-foot setback up to a 39-foot setback at the first floor, and push the second floor back 10 feet.
Yeah, obviously we need to have a garage.
Well, the second floor is only, all I'm saying on the second floor is push it, make a full gable, which is 2 or 3 feet, that's all, from what you have.
It's like 10 feet tall.
Yeah, that's what it is. And you have the room between the railing and the door without even compromising any of the layout, so you can actually push that.
I don't have any problem with doing that on the second floor. It will keep the same building. It's just that it will be shifted, and the entire
make
building.
A big difference from the streetscape.
No, of course, and I agree with you. I don't have any issue. If that's a major concern for you, I can do that. But what I'm saying is, the whole building also can be shifted back up to the average, reasonable 32, which is the average of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
There are other houses there that are, within that range. It's not clearly saying that we have a 40-foot setback, for instance, just put it over there.
Well, that was my question in the beginning. Is the prevailing setback 32 feet, or is it 39 feet when we're
average setback is 32?
In our staff report, and I don't know personally, we say the average of the properties in the 300-foot is 32 and a half.
So where did 39-foot come from? It's just the next door.
No, it's
existing. It's the existing where the building is.
But I kept on asking what the prevailing is, and I was told 39 feet over and over again.
By
somebody, or that's the perception I got in the hearing.
It's hard to say. In the aerial makes it look like this house is set back further than the other houses on the block.
We're meeting the average
We're meeting
neighborhood.
the average. Okay.
Can we verify the average if we make a condition, whatever the average is? I mean, is that something we could condition, whatever the average?
You could do whatever.
Maybe the average is 35.
You're the chairman.
We have ourselves measured.
Since we are in that transitional zone, I think there's plenty of support for the idea of just number with the flexibility, 32 to 39.
No, I trust the applicant will come up with a solution. He's not, he's
I would add to that, though, if we do go to like the 39, that 3-car with the tandem garage not be pushed into the oak tree canopy.
Yeah, no, we don't want to do that.
They can't.
Yeah, we can't. The only downside of that proposal is the garage would have to be moved to the property line, which meets code, but it does sometimes
create a problem
change for the neighbor. It's building right on their lot line.
And then pushing that back, I would be acceptable to having the smaller balcony with a trellised area.
That we're fine with it. I've checked it with my client.
And a trellis area too provides vertical
talking about-
screening? Or?
No, just a short balcony and the rest of it be
Correct.
Oh, a trellis, but
Trellis,
for the lower.
right.
Between the house and the pool.
I see.
right.
Ms. Palmer, is there a tree you could recommend for the front setback that would kind of...
Well, they have a tree in the
We have a tree there.
They have a narrow tree proposed.
Okay.
Because you don't want to put a wider
Exactly.
tree
Because then
because
it's
the oak
gonna get-
trees are going to be
right.
expanding towards the house. So what they have is acceptable.
Okay.
Mr. Just since I have you up here, I forgot to ask you this question. The rear roof,
Yes, sir.
the centerpiece where your master bath is, that roof on the back elevation, it seems like, for what I'm looking at the roof plan, it seems like this ridge is ending up here. When I look at it up here, the ridge is up high where the ridge of the main roof is. Is that just a...
Just the way it's graphically shown. It's going to intermingle, in other words, with each other, wherever the
that
slope
ridge
is.
shows the same height as the main ridge.
Yeah, we are using two different slopes. In the center, where it travels more, the slope is
Yeah, but
less.
the height of the peak of this is up here.
Right.
Then on my plan is way back here. It's not really going all the way.
Yeah. Roof plan needs to correct itself to be depicted.
However it is,
Yeah.
just look at that.
Sure.
Okay, let's move on.
Can we read all the recommendations?
So where are we set with the setback? Where are we with the setback?
I think that's the last thing to discuss, but maybe let's go through the conditions, and then we could entertain a motion and see what kind of support we get for a certain motion,
Okay.
and we move forward.
Sounds good. So we'll do the setback last. We have a proposed condition to eliminate staff recommended condition 5, and in its place, reduce the size of the second floor balcony, use a trellis structure over the remaining portion of the lower, of the first floor covered patio. So that would extend away from the balcony. And this is a condition from Board Member Palmer. Were you saying to use brick for the paving material for the driveway?
Well, I think we got to the point they weren't using brick on, if they weren't using brick on the house, there's no point in using brick on the paving.
Okay,
but
so we're eliminating brick
whatever
altogether.
you're using on the house, complement it with something in the drive.
And since I believe there was support for the staff condition to remove those columns and the piers,
Then they
then
wouldn't.
we'll just use whatever paving
Right.
they would like. Okay. And I'm not sure, I overheard the discussion, but didn't hear, there was a proposal to plant more, or at least more, a tree or more trees in the front yard?
No.
No.
It's not going to work, okay.
Well, no, there's already one tree.
There's one tree,
And we
yeah.
verified it's the right type of tree to screen the second
And we don't
floor.
want to do additional trees. It seems there is consensus to change the color palette to a darker color palette in general, contrasting trim and primary or main color. There was a recommended condition that the attic vents be site-built rather than prefabricated, which I think is
It
probably
is.
the...
It is. It is. That's the way it is. It's a true. Yeah.
Okay,
It is.
so we'll...
It's a vertical
won't-
siding there.
We won't make that a condition then. And there was, we're going to get rid of the columns. There was a staff condition that wasn't discussed to incorporate two separate windows at the upper left opening rather than the paired windows to kind of just create a more dynamic window pattern. Second
Fine
floor,
with it.
upper left.
That's,
I'm okay with it.
Okay, so
I'm either way, I'm okay, but...
yeah, we'll keep that.
Smaller windows, I think.
There was a staff condition about the columns at the rear garage loggia area that, to just make them more proportional to the other columns, so we'll keep that one. We have the balcony. I think there was concurrence on moving the pool at least 3 feet further to avoid, to be 5 feet beyond the drip line of the trees. There was a discussion, or there was a recommended condition to put more detail into the landscape plan, enhance the number of shrub species proposed, so there's more variety.
Make the planting compatible with the house. Right now,
Planting
that's
compatible.
disproportionate.
And additional species, you said there were too few
And depending on the color of the house, it needs to complement.
Okay.
Yeah, on the driveway, we have three different colors, really. Purple, and we have the blue.
But they're, this
Okay,
space
so
should
we'll enhance the landscape palette to match the color, to complement the color of the
it
house,
fit into the
style of
planter.
the house.
Right now, they have just like a 1 to 2 foot planting around the perimeter. Loosen it up a bit.
Loosen up the plan, and then also create more of a privacy barrier for the house to the north. Higher, taller plantings.
Well, I don't know if it's an issue with if we make it a trellis. That was in concern of the
Oh, just if we have
overhead
the deck out. Okay, so then we'll eliminate that. And there was a mention of the design of the fence at the or the gate at the driveway was appropriate. I wasn't sure from the drawing. Is it intended to be transparent?
In the beginning, before our staff, the meetings with the staff, I had proposed a solid one. I had proposed a wood siding actually there. But then it was changed. The staff felt that it needs to be transparent because it won't show the mass. It would not add to it. But in my opinion, it should be solid is because it actually brings down and continues with the landscaping. So I like to see.
I am fine with the wood siding. It doesn't have to be tried.
I think I don't remember if that was coming from me.
Especially safer for kids and everything.
No, I think it doesn't have. It could blend in better with the wood siding.
Okay, so we'll have a wood fence that's solid and blends with siding.
Gate,
yeah. And then I believe that's everything we talked about, and the last setback condition that I heard was provide a minimum 32-foot setback at the first floor with the option of expanding that to up to 39 feet, along with pushing the second floor back approximately 3 feet to be about 10 feet setback from the first floor facade.
But we were also going to mention that the average setback should be confirmed, so the 32.
Once we do that, would that change this condition?
I don't know. I mean, we need to confirm that 32. How do we confirm it, Mr. Zaharov?
I think we're just basing it on the average setback, which is given
Correct.
to us.
I'm okay with that.
Feet.
but if the average setback is like 39 feet.
But I have already checked it. It's 32.
Well,
we
if
have already done
he's
that.
saying it's 32, it's 32.
With all due respect, the document that we got had 3 errors on it. The document that I had in front of me, I haven't,
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So that's the issue.
But I think he's flexible. 32, 35. I think he can make it work.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just
we're not going to move any closer than 32.
No, we're not going to move.
So if we could verify the average setback for this portion of the block.
Correct.
And if we found that it was 35, would the board want us to maintain that?
Mm-hmm.
That's my.
Yeah, I just want to see,
Yes.
is there consensus? Or?
Yes.
My goal. Yeah.
Just one quick notation, and this is just going back to the roof plan. I would recommend looking at the center part of the 3 and 12 that it's indicated.
Thank you, Mr. Malik.
It's not going to work 3 and 12. It's much shallower because you're maintaining the eaves all around the same level, and then the ridge is the same level. And I think it's going to go below 3 and 12. So the shingles are not going to be allowed on a shallower roof. So that will affect the design.
I'll check it out. I can coordinate that definitely.
So
is that really true? Because 3 to 12. 4 to 12 coming on a valley.
Yeah, I'll make sure.
It's not gonna.
I'll make sure that it will work.
And we just want to make a cohesive. This neighborhood is sensitive, as you know.
Of course.
Across the street there's similar styles, 2 of them, and I want to get as close as, not mimic it, but close as possible in mass and scale. Okay.
So we'll correct the roof plan to ensure that slopes will be able to be clad with shingles to match the other shingles.
And Ms. Palmer had mentioned about the selection of material for the outdoor area that's in white, and you indicated that would be on a separate permit for the pool. What are you thinking?
What we can do is that if the driveway paving is going to be a certain type, I like to actually continue that, not the overwhelming everywhere, but I may have some sort of a grid pattern, which will have, some sort of a concrete between the grid pattern. If you make a condition on that, what I will do, I will actually show it, and I will discuss it with the staff.
A little bit more of a arborist condition than us being that we're getting closer towards the pool area and there's quite a bit of trees and in front.
No, that's in the middle. He's talking
about. He's talking about
this area where there's a family space.
I mean, this carries over to this area
and so forth.
So it's just there's some.
Should be permeable.
Permeable material, yeah.
Okay, we'll make permeable
If
materials.
he's doing the pavers like he talked about, those are pavers on
Permeable.
We should be
That's
fine.
right.
Exactly.
Should the whole thing be permeable or sections of it?
I think the wording
In the back,
should be,
it should be
permeable to the extent possible. I
Okay,
think.
sure.
So
We're fine with that.
All rear paving will be permeable.
Okay, I can create patterns with
Extent
different
possible.
different colors.
So, Mr. Platt, as far as all the conditions are concerned, I think there's consensus. The one item which I personally am not, I'd like to raise a question on, is the requirement for actually adhering to the prevailing setback, the average prevailing setback on the first floor, even though we're pushing it back another 10 feet on the second floor. From what's been discussed, the 32-foot setback on the first floor as kind of a solid line where there's some direction and there's a solid setback to adhere to, with a 10-foot setback on the second floor, coupled with the fact that we have a tree in the front yard. And most importantly, because of the transition that we are creating, where we're certainly leaning towards something that's much closer to the prevailing setback, yet it's maybe 1 or 2 feet, whatever the issue might be, encroaching onto the prevailing setback, but it just happens to be next to two homes which certainly are encroaching into the prevailing setback, I think is good planning direction. I do think the transition is an important thing. Now, whether it's this project specifically or other future projects, I think a mid-block is certainly very different than this. So I do support all the conditions with the condition, as you stated initially, of a 32-foot to 39-foot first floor with the second floor setback 10 feet from whatever the first floor ends up
So you would
being.
want to eliminate the part of that condition, verify the average setback, and if it's larger, meet it.
Correct. That's just my how I would approach support for the project.
Well, that's what we were talking about all along at the beginning. That should be where the existing building is, basically. That's what we're saying.
Well, yes, but at the same time, I think there was so much going back and forth that where we ended up was a number. And so I do think that transition is important.
And since Mr. Zarabian has studied the block and believes that the setback is 32.5 feet, I think we're pretty close at this 32. And it's a better, for us, it's a better condition not to leave something pending a survey or some other verification that we're not able to, staff can't make that verification. We can't go measure all of the setbacks on private property. So it's easier for us to just say minimum 32 up to 39 and then be very clear on the second floor.
The second floor is clear. It's only 3 feet. We're talking whatever it is right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Additional 3 feet, which right now is 7 plus 3, 10.
Second floor is not on the...
It's a lot of setback, yeah.
The first floor is the number, so however however you craft it, I mean...
Okay, well, that's what we'll do. It's a little bit at odds with where you were going with the verification, so if you're comfortable with that, we'll just go with that.
Well, that's what my original goal was, is to make sure that, street setback is maintained.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I skipped one about identifying the trash can location.
Well, they already have just shown that.
Yeah, it's all right. So I just noticed it's on the drawing.
It is on the drawing.
The gate, so we'll eliminate that. Okay, that's everything.
Take a motion?
I would move to approve based on the conditions.
You need to close the public
Oh,
hearing.
public hearing is closed. I thought it was closed a while back.
You gotta use the gavel.
Oh, I gotta
You're
use
very
okay, it's
informal
official.
tonight.
All
You
right.
gotta make it official.
Okay, Commissioner Palmer, motion.
Need a second?
I'll second it.
Simonian, second. Roll call, Board Member Charchin.
Yes.
Board Member Palmer.
Yes.
Board Member Malikian.
Yes.
Board Member Simonian.
Yes.
Chair Mardian.
Yes.
5-0 to approve with conditions.
We have minutes. Okay.
Oh, I think we got minutes.
I'll move to adjourn.
We're not complaining.
Second. Do we need a motion
70
for
minutes.
I
adjournment?
did, and then
Oh.
second,
Second. and
hit the gavel, and hit the gavel,
All right.
make it official. Okay.
You want me to really use this?